Good evening and welcome to the third of a series of debates regarding Meet the Candidate Night for the BOE positions. Our candidates are Mr. Hochstein, current BOE member Mr. Ferrioli, Mr. Warshaw, and Mrs. Panico. Round of applause. All of us in this room should be grateful that we have people willing to serve our community in volunteer positions, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll begin with Mr. Hochstein. You have 2.5 minutes to do your opening statements. We will raise the sign when you have 30 seconds left. Thank you.
My name is Robert Hochstein. I lived in the district for 20 years. I've worked for the district. I was the facilities director for 14 years. In that time frame, I did a lot of budget work because I was responsible for $230 million worth of construction in the district. I was also the district's health and safety coordinator. I'm running because I had the time to run. I'm retired for a few years, and I want to give back to the community and the kids. I've been lucky enough to watch these kids go from kindergarten to graduation quite a few times, and I'd like to continue serving.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ferrioli?
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Nick Ferrioli. I am the current Vice President of the Board. I've been on for the last 3 years, and the first thing I'd like to do is say how honored I am to have served Connecticut. I think you have a great administration, you have great people, parents, the kids. It's an amazing experience. I want to thank you guys for coming out tonight. Give you a little bit of background about myself. I am a lifelong educator. I've been an educator in Brentwood for the last 19 years. Does anybody need to think I need a microphone? Can you all hear me? Right now? Yes, you good or no? You good? My wife is also an educator, so it's kind of what we do. We're in the business of educating. So I thought it was important a couple of years ago to get involved and finally put my money where my mouth was, because I'd gone down to some board meetings and had expressed some opinions that I thought were important for moving our district forward, protecting our kids, and I was elected. So it was a great experience. I have a lot of experience. I have a business degree as well as an education degree. So as far as the business side of it and the budget side of it, I've dealt with a lot of that stuff. I used to run an entire Little League. I was the vice president of Hot Dog Little League for 9 years, so I dealt with budgeting, I dealt with staffing. I know it's a small scale, much smaller than what I've experienced over the last 3 years, but I've learned a lot. The lady who was just here giving you the budget presentation, Sharon Donnelly, she's amazing as our business director, so whoever gets to work with her, she's just really good at putting everything in place for you to make educated decisions. So we're in a good place. The reason I want to continue running is because I feel like I started something that is moving in the right direction. Our administration is moving our district in the right direction, trying to put new programs in place, trying to support everything that the kids are doing, and I really want to continue to be part of that. I did not want to walk away after 3 years and say, you know what, this is not me, that's not me. I feel it's not finished, we've got a ways to go, and I want to continue serving you and your kids. So I appreciate you guys coming out tonight. I look forward to answering your questions, and most importantly, go vote for the budget, because that's most important for our kids.
Thank you, Mr. Ferrioli. Mr. Warshaw?
Hello everyone, my name is Mark Warshaw. I've been a resident of the community for over 23 years. I always felt it was important to give back. I volunteered over 100 years, over 20 years for different organizations. And it was gratifying on so many different levels. I faced many obstacles throughout my life. One of them was losing a son. I felt it necessary and beneficial to use the emotion and reflect it in a positive outcome, which I learned how to do. Well, I also own a business for over 20 years. With my personal experience and with the business that I run, I feel I can make a great trustee for the Board of Education. I can be a positive influence. I'll always be transparent. I'll never assume. I'll listen all the time. I have a lot of respect for people. I think mutual respect is very important. So I think how you control yourself and you handle your demeanor is very important. So I think it's something that I was taught at a young age, and I tried to keep that going. I will always do that. So even tonight, I was tested when I walked in here, and I didn't respond. I just said thank you anyway. And, you know, somebody had told me I'm not voting for you, and just said something. I was like, that's okay. You're entitled. It's your life. You do what you need to do. I said, it is what it is. I just hope you vote. And you know, too many people put too many emphasis on too many things. There's a lot more things that are more important in life. This is something that's important to me because I like giving and I love the children of Connecticut. I'll end it there, and I just want to say thank you for the time and thank you for being here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Warford. Ms. Panico?
Hi, I'm Eileen Panico. It's not my turn. Most of you know me, but I'll give you a little bit of background. I've been in the Civic now, you heard that earlier, for 5 years. I started as the treasurer, became the vice president, and now I'm the president. I've also volunteered for the PTA since my kids were little. I started out there just on some committees, became a treasurer for the Duffield, worked through with the middle school PTA, became council president for 2 terms, and I've stayed involved in the PTAs. I still go back to the elementary schools and volunteer because I love the kids. I also do a lot of volunteer work for the high school. There are a lot of things that aren't through the PTAs, actually through the high school, like Relay for Life, as well as freshman awareness. I actually slept overnight in that school on the floor. It's really not that comfortable, but it was fun. The kids had a great time, and it was really worth it. I believe in transparency, so much so that in 2015 I began taping all the Board of Ed meetings. I started attending them quite some time ago, probably about 10 years ago, and I've probably attended over 150 board meetings, and in the last 3 years I haven't missed any. I do tape every single board meeting so that we can get more information out to our community. A lot of people can't make it to these meetings. They have little kids, and they have to be home. They can't be at a board meeting that lasts till 11, 12 at night. So I do tape them, I do put them online to promote transparency. There's been a lot of things that I've seen lately that I don't like, a lot of discourteous behavior on the board. Parents are not listened to. A lot of things that I don't believe should be, which is one of the main reasons I'm running. I'd like to change some of those things. I like community input, and I think that we should always put the community first. So that is why I'm running. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move into our question and answer session. I will begin with Mr. Hochstein, correct? And then we will go through one round, and then I will start the next question with Mr. Ferrioli. So you will have 1.5 minutes.
There may be questions directed at one person here.
There's
There may be, I'm not sure. Okay,
everyone.
okay,
I got it.
gotcha. You go, girl.
All right. So, Mr. Hochstein, are you ready, sir?
Yes.
The district is implementing improved security measures, but once an intruder enters, the risk to students and staff increased exponentially. Are you willing to entertain the possibility of armed guards?
I don't believe that the school should have armed guards. I'm sorry. I don't believe that the school should have armed guards. I think it can be very upsetting or scary for kids and staff. There are a lot of accidents that have happened throughout the country with guns in schools, with staff, and with security. And I think we should just upgrade and continue using the security that we have now and upgrade what we have now, because we have a pretty good system.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ferrioli, would you like me to repeat the question?
No.
Okay.
I am not against armed guards in our schools. I really feel that it is important that it is done right. And when I say it's done right, it's very important who's doing the hiring, how they are vetted, whether or not they have connections with our staff, our kids. It's important that our kids know these people. They know our security guards now. They're very comfortable with them. The kids respond to them. I don't want to hire an outside service that just sends a guard every day like a lot of school districts that have hired guard services are doing now. Currently, there is no position that's available in the civil service. We have, as a board and the superintendent, have spoken with Mr. Schneider, who's the head of Suffolk County Personnel, and they're working on putting together a position in Suffolk County, Mr. Cuomo, the governor, has also done it in New York State, so now it's just a matter of Suffolk County being able to do that. Hopefully that will help facilitate being able to hire through civil service. Even, the district is hiring, we can hire people, or we can possibly move some of our guards that we currently have, because most of them are retired police officers, into that position that we feel comfortable with. So I'm not against it, but I think it needs to be done right, and it's really important. I'd also prefer it to be on the border, not necessarily in the school. I think arming, guards and having them at the gates and the doorways to stop intruders before they even get in the building is a big piece of that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Warshaw?
I'm good. I'm a firm believer that schools actually need to be safe as possible. If students do not feel safe, they cannot function properly, and their whole environment is not the same. You don't learn as well. I'm against having armed guards and stuff like that, and I think the question was, would I entertain? The reason why I'm against it is I think it puts a little bit of uncomfortability. Would I entertain it? Of course, and I think Mr. Farioli's answer was perfect and spot on, where he said he would investigate and look into things and look at who we're hiring. I think it's important. I think it's very important that we really know who's coming into the school. I mean, as much as you think you know somebody, you don't know them, so there really has to be due diligence on that. But I am against it, but I would listen, because I think the whole idea of being up here is it's not up to me, it's up to you. I'm just a voice for all of us. So that's really what I think is important. That's what I'm going to try to do while I'm up here.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Panico?
Thanks. We've been asked this question, this is the third Meet the Candidates, so we've probably been asked this question three times. I am not against arming guards with a lot of ifs, and I've made this very clear on Facebook. I've said this many times. If it's concealed weapon, if they are highly trained, if they are vetted, if they know how to be around children with special needs. There's a lot of ifs involved. So in that, I agree with Mr. Warshaw and Mr. Farioli. There has to be a big process before we just shove someone in there. There has to be a vetting. I don't want, as Nick said, I don't want a stranger coming in that our kids don't know, who doesn't know our children, and mistakenly shoots one of our own children because they don't know our culture. So there's a lot of ifs that surround that, but I am not against armed guards. I think we need to protect our children to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Farioli?
Yes?
Okay. Mrs. Lengthy?
Okay.
Excuse me. The board was presented with the possibility of a do-no-harm policy regarding Regents exams. The current policy voted on by the BOE, which was the Teacher and Administrator-driven committee, still hurts children. Would you be willing to revisit this issue? Second piece to this, unless you'd like to go with that first.
No, go ahead.
Okay. What would you do or suggest to administration that would provide parents with an equal voice on matters like this?
Okay, well, I know there are some, I'm going to answer the second part first. I know there's some people who have some very strong opinions about the way the committees are set up. I also have some very strong opinions about the way the committees are set up. I think they are stacked on both sides in different occasions, depending on what they're trying to figure out the outcome. Sometimes they're stacked in one direction, sometimes they're stacked in the other. So I'm not a big fan of them, the way they're run currently. I think that's the first thing that needs to be looked at, is some of the committee and the process of how they're put together, and whom sits on them needs to be changed. That's the first thing that I think would give parents a better voice.
Yes, sir.
The other piece, I voted for the current change that's going to happen in September, which, when you look at the numbers, is, to me, essentially a do-no-harm policy, because you have taken what was currently a 20% calculation for the Regents grade, and you've lowered it down to 8.75%. I believe in accountability. I believe when you go to work every day as an educator, you have to have something that you can tell the children they need to be accountable for. So all the people that I've talked to that have children who succeed really don't have a problem with them having a small percentage count on it. All of the educators that I've spoken to really feel like it's something that the kids need to be able to strive for. And that's why I don't believe we should go to no harm. Should we revisit it? Absolutely. If it's still hurting our children, this current policy, the first step, we should move in a direction to revisit it and look at if we can help our children further. But this is a really good first step, I believe.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Warshaw?
Repeat that, please.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. The board was presented with the possibility of a do-no-harm policy regarding Regents exams. which means that the percentage that they calculate or factor into a student's grade at the end of the year, okay?
I know it was lowered to 8.5%.
8.75%.
The board lowered it. The current policy voted on by the BOE, the board, which was teacher and administration driven, still hurts children. Would you be willing to revisit this issue? That's the first half. You want to answer that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd be willing to revisit anything as long as it's gonna help out children. So once again, if it's gonna help the children, I think it's beneficial to always revisit something and get ideas from the community. I'd have to go out into the community a little bit more and get the feedback a little bit more. I wasn't prepared for this question as well, and I have to ask teachers and see what they think. I think that would help me a lot with entertaining that question a lot more.
Okay, and second piece to it is, what would you do or suggest to administration that would provide parents with an equal voice on matters like this?
Send them
Aside-
out, okay?
Go ahead.
Send them out more information, let them know what's going on more. The more we get, the more we know as a parent. I'm a parent in the district. Sometimes you're not in the loop and you don't know what's going on, so if you send out more emails and get people involved more, and that's up to us on the leadership of the board to get more people involved and have more ears out there, more people giving ideas, because it only makes you stronger and better.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Panico?
Okay, I'm gonna answer the second part first as well. I have sat on many of those committees, hiring committees, several different policy committees, and there's usually one or two parents. On the hiring committee alone, we're only allowed one or two parents. But on the other committees, we only get about one or two parents. So there is not enough parental involvement there, and the committees normally, in my opinion, from what I've been through, there's already a predetermined outcome. So really, I feel like my voice does not matter, and you've actually just wasted my whole day sitting on this committee that already has a predetermined outcome. So no matter what I chose, there was no point in it. So I think that needs to be looked over, that needs to be changed, and I've been saying that for quite some time now. The do no harm, we actually had a discussion about this on Facebook last night. I definitely think it needs to be revisited. It is not a do no harm policy. The model that was used by the presenter was skewed. If you use a model from someone on the lower end, someone that doesn't succeed all the time, it will actually harm children. So I believe that we do need to fix that, especially when the Regent score, you don't need it for anything. It means nothing. It doesn't tell you what you actually learned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Panico. Mr. Hochstein, would you like me to repeat it? Okay, sir. The board was presented with the possibility of a do no harm policy regarding Regents exams. The current policy voted on by the BOE, which was teacher and administrator driven, still hurts children. Would you be willing to revisit this issue? That's part one. Would you like to answer that first?
Sure.
Okay.
I would be willing to revisit the issue and have the community or the parents included more. I'm really not prepared for this question, but I would just, that's what I would do. I think the community needs to have more information than they've been getting.
Thank you. And part two, which you kind of covered, but I'll give you a chance. What would you do or suggest to administration that would provide parents with an equal voice on matters like this? You touched on that.
Well, I think what Mark had said, it's about what I would say also is that the district needs to inform people more. We used to have to get more people involved. It's, the district works behind closed doors a lot. People don't like that too much, but that's what has to be. They should be giving out more information than they normally do, and answer questions that they get quickly.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Warshaw.
Yes.
All right. It is well known that getting a position, particularly a teaching position, is about who you know. What would you like to see implemented in order to create a more transparent process, in order to hire the most qualified candidates?
So you're saying that at
I'm
this-
not saying
okay,
anything.
this is
I'm
what the
bringing a question.
Is the question, that was good. Is
Yeah.
the question dictating to me that at this time, that's what's being done?
Yes, sir.
So what would I do?
What would you do?
I would definitely make my voice be heard, because you know what? You're supposed to be hired based on your merit and what you've done to get to where you are in life. I know it's a lot about who you know and all that stuff, but that's not what's best for the kids. And I think it's a different ball game when you're doing what's best for the kids. It's not about who you know. It's about what's gonna be done for our children and the best for them. So I would find a way to get to the root of that. I would do my search, and I would find out who's doing it. I would make a pretty, I voice my opinion, as you guys know, even if it's not liked. But if it's something I believe in, something I think is right, I'm gonna stick to what I believe. And it's just how I roll.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Mrs. Panico?
You don't need to repeat that. As I said, I've been on many of these committees. I felt like my entire day was wasted. They already knew who they were hiring. I think the entire policy needs to be revamped. I think from the Board of Education on down, we have a big level of mistrust in our district. I've heard from other districts that no one applies to ConnectQuad anymore because it's not what you know, it's who you know. So no one will apply there. We do need to get the best people for that job, and to do that, that entire committee, that entire policy needs to be rewritten. Parents do not have a voice on that at all. There's about 8 administrators, 17 teachers, 14, I don't even know who else, and 1 parent. We don't have a voice. They already knew who was being picked. We are only included in one of the levels, not all of the levels. It's very skewed. So yes, that entire policy needs to be written, and it's one of my goals that I have if I am elected to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Panico. Mr. Hochstein? Yes, sir. It is well known that getting a position, particularly a teaching position, is about who you know. What would you like to see implemented in order to create a more transparent process in order to hire the most qualified candidate?
Well, I'd like to see more people be involved in the hiring process. I understand the question, being a facilities director in the district for a long period of time. I've seen that problem. ConnectQuad does have a reputation for that, and I'd like to see that changed. ConnectQuad's a great district, and you shouldn't have to be known for something like that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ferrioli?
Okay, well, like I stated before, I think the committees have gone both ways, where they've been stacked in both directions. So I don't necessarily agree with the committees. I think that the stakeholders on the committees need to be more even. I can say, though, speaking from experience in the last 3 years, that the only thing that the BOE is involved in is not the committees, but as far as if you have a recommendation, you can get what someone is called a courtesy interview. That's as far as it goes from the BOE standpoint. I think in 3 years, I've had 2 people get courtesy interviews, neither one of them has gotten a job. So I don't know about involvement or who you know, and it seems to be a very question that someone has an opinion on because they've either experienced it or they've had somebody deal with that. But I can tell you that I would definitely look at communication with the different groups and trying to even out what's on the committee so it was, more fair, because I don't know. I am not a big fan of the committees the way they're set up as they currently stand.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Panico? How will you balance the needs of students that have a diagnosis that impacts their maturity, social interactions, and behavior, and are given consequences in line with school policies regarding their behavior?
Well, I can tell you this. I've also talked about this a lot too. Right now, we are a punish-based system in this entire world. When you take someone and you kick them around and you throw them in the corner, they're not learning. If someone is acting out, there's usually an issue behind why they're acting out. Whether it's a disability, whether they had a parent issue at home, maybe their mother or father just passed away. You never know what's going on in someone's home. So I believe in finding out what the problem is before we just, you did that, you took your phone out, you get detention for 2 days. I think you need to find out why something's going on with the kid before we just punish them. I think that's a big thing that our teachers, there are a lot of our teachers, I have to say, most of our teachers, all I had to do on my own personal experience when I had an issue was send a letter to all my daughter's teachers, letting her know that there was an issue going on at home, and they did cut her some slack. Do other parents know about that? Maybe not, but we need to get that word out to those parents to let them know to talk to their teachers. Because when you work in conjunction as a parent with the teachers, most of the time they'll work with you. If you don't talk to the teachers and your child is just acting out, they're going to get punished. We need to change that though. We need to work together as a community, as a whole, and find out what the issue is first before we just stick them in a room, which does no good for anyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Hochstein, would you like me to repeat the question? How will you balance the needs of students that have a diagnosis that impacts their maturity, social interactions, and behavior, and are given consequences in line with school policies regarding their behavior?
Well, I think that the administration and the faculty should make some changes and try and be aware of issues that some children have. The parents should be involved also. I don't think they should just be reprimanded without finding out what the problem is. As Adeline said, there could be a lot of problems at home. They could have a lot of personal problems. And I think that just needs to be looked at closer, and that's what
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ferrioli?
One more time, that's a tricky one.
Okay. How will you balance the needs of students that have a diagnosis or diagnoses that impacts their maturity, social interactions, and behavior, and are given consequences in line with school policies regarding their behavior?
Okay. Well, I think the first thing that's really important is, again, you need to set some guidelines, but that doesn't mean they need to be hard, fast guidelines for kids. Every child is different. Every child behaves in a certain way. If you're talking about a special needs child, they're going to have an entire, folder that goes along with them. You have to get to know your kids, as an educator. As a board member, you've got to make sure that the teachers have the things in place that they need to be able to help those children. I can't go into a classroom and help a child. I can do that in my classroom, but I can't do it here. So we have to make sure that they have the things in place that they need to be able to help those children. I do believe there needs to be some leeway in helping that child who may be having some difficulty or some, emotional situations going on. You have to know their circumstance, and that's on not only the teachers, but also the administrators. They have to know their kids. If they don't, and they're reacting to a situation that's different for each child, that can be, disastrous. So it's really important that everybody knows the kids, and that we do find out the specific situations before we react to it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Warsaw?
It's a difficult question. One, I think you need to be an expertise on. You need to be in that field, but I'll answer it to the best of my ability. We're a little top-heavy right now in administration, from what I hear and from what I understand by asking questions. And I think maybe we need to get a little more mental health people into the classrooms and observing and seeing what's going on. Because it's a really touchy situation. It's not something easily dealt with, and people don't know how to deal with it. And I think the person that's in that field has a little bit more expertise. I'd rather see us hire somebody and if that's their specialty, give us a little bit more, because I think they would help us a little bit more. Also, the teachers are responsible, like Mr. Farrell was saying. You got to know your student. You got to know your children. Know what's going on. I asked questions when I coached football. I used to ask them, how you doing at home, what's going on, and I would try to get to know the students. So it's your job as a teacher to get to know the student. I think it helps you in the long run, and you can start to see some problems and maybe talk to one of his teachers and say, hey, listen, he's having problems at home. See what you can do to help him out. Just to make people more aware. We're a team working together, Board of Education and the teachers and the administration. So if we work together, we'll have better results.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Mr. Hochstein? Ready? The individual who wrote this question would like to see a program for special needs children as it relates to sports. How would you go about starting one?
Well, I would talk to the athletic director and the athletic administration and teachers, see what their ideas were in putting something like that together. I know I went through that process myself, where I had a child that had some issues, and the athletic department helped him out immensely. Turned out to be a great kid, but his problems were serious. So I think that I would try and get more people involved in that and get a committee together maybe. I know there's a lot of committees. And see what the teachers have to say.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ferrioli?
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting topic, because I thought first of, how do we get the experts in? Because, I have an educational background, and I have a background in dealing with some special needs kids but I wouldn't even know where to begin as far as that. So I'd have to rely on the experts. I'd want to get in some kind of a person who runs a program for special needs. I'd want to definitely bring in the athletic director and the teachers and find out what they think is best for the children of Connecticut, because they know they deal with them every day, different than the population I deal with every day. And then you'd have to look at also, you know, we all know that things revolve around funding. So we need to find ways to fund that. You know, I think it's important that you could fund something like that, but we have to find a way without, you know, obviously cutting other services, so we need to find a way to do that.
Yes.
So we'd have to bring in a lot of experts. We have to gather a lot of information. Possibly it's a committee, but I think bringing in the experts would be more, you know, and forming something like that would be really, really important.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Warshaw?
I have to agree, you need to have experts give their advice on what you can do as far as doing something for the children. And trying to make it the best suited for them and find a game that would make them happy. I would volunteer my time too. I actually would love to help because that's what I think is important. And if somebody would tell me the right way to help, I mean, I think it would be a great benefit to just reach out and give somebody a hug and help them and make these kids feel good. So I would do that. That's just what I would do. I would offer my time. And I'd also try to find out some stuff and from the experts.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Panico?
All right, so I have some interesting info with this kind of project. My daughter, a few years ago, played lacrosse for the first time in middle school, so it's a couple of years ago. There happened to be a father there who ran a thing called Challenger Lacrosse. She wasn't an expert in lacrosse, my daughter, and they asked her to join this Challenger Lacrosse. She became the buddy, and she helped athletes. The athletes were special needs kids. It is an amazing program. I'm sure there were experts that put it together, but they were all volunteers. So really, to do this kind of program, you need a lot of heart, and you need a lot of volunteers, and of course you do need experts to make sure that everybody's safe. I think we can get it done. Money is not an issue in our district. We have $19 million. I've said this for 3 Meet the Candidates, so sorry if I sound a little bit repetitive,
It's
but
okay.
yeah. We have $19 million as of last year. We had $19 million left in our unapplied fund balance. There is money for programs and services for children, and this is what we should be using the money for, not for a top-heavy administration that we currently have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ferrioli?
Yes.
The administration seeks to increase AP course offerings and encourage more students to take these classes. The tests are expensive, even to those you may think can afford these exams. Would you consider the district absorbing the cost so all students have access? Current financial need is dictated by whether the student gets free or reduced lunch.
Okay. I would definitely entertain looking at whether or not we should be paying for everybody to get it. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the idea of having every child take an AP course. There are some kids who are going to have a tech career, and there are some kids who are going to not be ready for an AP course. I think putting them in that and forcing them to do something, which seems to be the push now, may not necessarily benefit every child. So from that perspective, I don't necessarily agree with everybody with taking one, but on the other hand, definitely the ones that are taking them, if we can find a way to pay for that for the kids, and it's not, you know, a financial burden, then yeah, we should be able to look at that.
Excellent, thank you, sir. Mr. Warshaw?
Absolutely. We're all equal. Money shouldn't be an issue. These kids should not even have to go home and ask their parents about something like that. Including if you're wealthy or whatever, it shouldn't be a subject that the kids are talking about. Because you won't even have that cliche, oh, he can do it, oh, he has to get help. Get rid of that. Everybody gets it. We can do it. We can afford it. Based on what I'm hearing, we have the money. Spend it when it's for the children. So it's a great thing to spend it for the children, and you eliminate people knowing who got financial aid, who got this, who got that. Doesn't matter. As long as we're all getting what we need to do in proper education for these kids, I'm all for it. And I agree, you know, you have to be ready for it. It shouldn't be something that we just say, okay, anybody can do it. You have to have certain qualifications. Obviously, Mr. Ferrioli made a good point. Not everybody's going to be a doctor and have to do AP classes and all this stuff. There's going to be guys with in engineering and car and mechanics. So that would be something different for them. So you gotta use it smartly also. Us, as the Board of Education, would try to have to come up with a plan, but absolutely do what you can for the kids.
Mrs. Panico?
Thank you. So currently, we spend a lot of money on our special needs, and we spend a lot of money on our AP classes. We kind of forget the middle-of-the-road kids. So right there is where I have a big issue. However, with that being said, anything that is required from our children, and we are requiring it, we are mandating it on our children, the district should pay for it. For example, here's a stupid thing that I just found out. Caps and gowns. The gowns are $5. The caps that the kids throw up in the air are $33. They're required to graduate. The district should be paying for that. So just like the caps and gowns, AP classes, if required, should be paid for by the district, whether or not you can afford it. And by the way, everyone here may not know my situation. My family went through some hardships. My husband had a heart attack and was beat up, and so we've gone through some financial hardships of our own. They don't pay for the full thing. Our school district does not pay for the full thing if you are on free or reduced lunch. I just want everyone to be aware that we don't get a free ride that way either. So I think if it's required, it should be paid for. Thank you.
Thank you. Ready? You want me to repeat it?
Please.
The administration seeks to increase AP course offerings and encourage more students to take these classes. The tests are expensive, even to those who you may think can afford these exams. Would you consider the district absorbing the cost so all students have access? Currently, financial need is dictated by whether the student gets free or reduced lunch. I can paraphrase it for you if you like.
Well, I think that kids that take AP,
Yes, sir.
or the children that want to take AP, should have the district pay for those costs. And people that can't afford it, they should also be paid for by the district. As Mark had said too, there are a lot of kids that aren't following that path. So you would need to specify who wanted to take the APs.
Thank you. Mr. Warshaw,
Yes.
how would you justify the parental overreach of mandating community service for a graduation requirement?
In other words?
In other words, and this question for me,
Can you repeat the
Yeah.
question?
I read it, okay, I'm going to read it one more time. The question, as it's written, states, how would you justify the parental overreach of mandating community service for a graduation requirement? Yes, I did not write this question. I'm thinking, I did not write any of them, I'm thinking the individual is suggesting that it was a parental push,
No.
perhaps?
I think, and I could be wrong, but I think that it's mandating something, you're overreaching parental rights.
By mandating.
By mandating something, you're what's the
Would that
word?
be-
You're kind of going over what a parent should do. That's how I'm interpreting it.
How about this?
Someone just yelled yes, so I'm assuming that might be the person that wrote the question.
Well, how about, how do you justify overstepping a parental boundary, perhaps?
That's good, yes.
Of mandating community service for a graduation requirement?
Okay?
Do you think it's appropriate, yes, for the district to mandate community service?
It's gonna benefit the child, and, it's a touchy situation, you know, if somebody wanted to go up to me and say, hey, this is what we're doing for your kid, no matter what, I'd have to say, well, why, you know, I mean, if there was, my son had a danger and there was something wrong, I can understand it. I don't know, it's a tough situation, I'd have to do more research, I really don't fully understand that question. And I'm just gonna go with what I said, I mean, sorry if I didn't answer
No.
it what you wanted, but I really don't have an idea.
Okay, that's fine.
And I'm sorry, you know, if you have the answer, tell me, please, because I really don't understand the question that well. I mean, it was said so many different ways. I'm spinning a little bit.
Well, I can go one more time for you. You have time left.
I do, all right, spin me some more.
Do you think, do you think the district has the right to force children to do community service?
Do I think the district has the right?
Yes.
For graduation, so in other words, make them
A requirement.
a requirement to have a right. I mean, I don't know the kid's situation. I don't think they have a right, because if the kid has to go home and has to go to work every day, you really don't have the right. Can you make it part of something? You can make anything you want. As we're up here, this is what the community wants. This is what we're going for, and this is what we want. We put it in place. We gotta live with our decisions. That's really what we gotta live with. So we make that as a community what we think. Do I agree with some of the things? Sometimes I may not. You know, this is a tough situation because I don't know what's going on in every single kid's life. I don't know if you have to go home today, you know what, you gotta take care of mom. Because let me tell you something, I go home, I take care of my mom if I have to. I don't care what you want me to do at the school.
Right.
You know, so it's a different, that's the other question.
Thank you. No worries.
Yeah,
Mrs. Hanekom.
Okay, so we've answered that type of question a couple of times now, and I'm going to agree with Mr. Warshar. I've been very outspoken about mandating volunteerism. It's, by the very word volunteerism, cannot be mandated. It's a volunteer. If you make it a mandate, it's no longer being a volunteer. I'm a volunteer. I volunteer to countless organizations. My time all over the place. My children volunteer. These children here today volunteer. But that doesn't mean that they should have to. If you make a child do it, it's not volunteering anymore. Now you're saying it's required. You have to do it. You can't call it volunteerism. Once you say that a child has to do something and you mandate it, then you have to provide the means for them to do that. If it's after school, and this child can't do it after school because they have issues at home, then you have to provide it in school. The problem with that is that we have this big attendance policy that says you have to be in this seat so many hours a day. So it conflicts and it's going to be very hard to do. I don't think that it is a doable process the way it is now. And again, if you mandate something, it's not a volunteer. Thank you.
Mr. Hochstein?
Not a volunteer.
Do you support the district making community service a requirement?
No, I wouldn't.
We need air conditioning on again.
That's community service is community service. You're volunteering to do something. You're putting yourself out there. Mandating it, as they said also, it just, you're not letting them volunteer. You're not letting people volunteer. I know a lot of colleges, that's an issue with them. They ask for what you've been volunteering for. But again, all students might not be able to, if the district mandated it, they really might not be able to follow it.
Thank you. Mr. Ferrioli?
Okay, I guess I'm gonna have to disagree slightly with everyone else sitting up here. I do believe that if it's done right, a minimum amount of required volunteerism is a good thing for students. That being said, we do need to make some exceptions. There are children in our special needs population, there are children who have circumstances, whether it be ill parents, things like that, and there's no reason why any one of those children with the proper, communication with their parent from home could not find ways to be exempt or possibly can provide those opportunities at school. I think that's a big piece of it. I think that the school has to set up ways for it to happen. They have to give credit to the children who are already participating in events in our schools, and those can count towards community service. I think when people hear the word community service, they think, oh, we have to go to the soup kitchen, we have to go to the church. I don't think that's the idea that was behind the premise. The idea was to get kids more involved in anything that's going on outside of their normal life, whether it be something at school, whether it be something in their community. I also think it's a big piece that will help a lot of our kids who are in the category where they may be alone. They may not have as many friends. You go volunteer somewhere and you make a new friend. You never know where that's going to happen. So putting people out there and getting people involved, I just can't see it as a bad thing. I just see that it needs to be minimal, and it needs to be something that is really controlled by the school, and every kid gets credit for what they're doing in the community already.
Thank you, Mr. Ferrioli. Mrs. Stanico?
Oh, I start now?
Yes.
Oh.
Would you increase or decrease personalized competency-based learning in our district, and why?
Say that again. You don't have to say the increase or decrease.
Would you increase or decrease personalized competency-based learning in our district, and why?
Personalized competency-based
Based learning.
learning. I'm not even sure what that is, and I
think
thought it was,
that's those new programs
Is
where
that the new-
the questions get harder if you're doing better.
Is
They
that-
don't
is
get
that
as
what they are
hard
on
as
the
if you're
computer?
doing-
I think that it is technology-driven,
okay.
and it removes,
I haven't heard it called that.
I'm not going to
Is
answer
that the
because
kid,
that would be unfair,
kid
so I won't
OEO?
explain.
Is that, if that's the kid OEO and all those other initiatives that they're doing,
I can't help it.
where a child sits in front of a computer and as he presses the buttons and gets the answers right, the answers get harder, then I am against that. I believe in teacher-based learning. We just saw this with McDonald's. You know, they raised the minimum wage to age 15, to $15 an hour, and kids lost jobs because they put in kiosks. So do we want teachers to lose their jobs because we're sitting our child behind a computer? There's no social interactions. They're just sitting behind a computer, pressing a button and watching it get harder. I am definitely not in favor of increasing that at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hochstein?
I'm really not familiar with that at this point, so I'd rather not give you an answer. But I would be willing to learn about it. I've just not heard about it.
Mr. Ferrioli?
I don't really think that it's going to cost teachers their jobs, because it's important. I have a few programs that I work with currently that are like that. I think they're really helpful for kids that are behind and remedial work, because it can spiral them backwards to where they need to be at a specific location, and then slowly build them back up as they are using the program. So I think they can be beneficial to children. As far as increasing or decreasing, I think it's important that we evaluate the ones we have, make sure they're working. If not, replace them with something else. I don't know what our population needs. If our population needs, that's the job of the directors. They bring that information to us. If a population needs a new program, then we should look at investigating that program and bringing it in. The programs are actually, can be very beneficial to children. They're also helpful to the teacher, because the teacher can have a child working at a different level, and you can almost create what's like a special education environment in a regular educational setting, where you can have differentiated instruction, and you have more kids benefiting at the same time than you have if you only have one instructor. So I don't really feel it's going to cost teacher jobs, because the teacher needs there to facilitate what's going on in the program, and needs to be there to help the kid when the kid gets into trouble. So I don't know about increasing or decreasing, but I definitely think the programs are beneficial to children.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Washer?
Decrease. I think it's more of the teacher's hands-on. I think, the socialization of the teacher and the student. I'm not saying it's not important. You're just asking increase or decrease. I would decrease it. I'm more of an old school type of guy. I like communication. I'm not I believe in technology because I know it's where we're going. So I know it's a lot, but I also believe in eye contact. I believe in reading a person, looking at their heart, looking at what they got and what they bring to the table. And I think when the teacher has that, and I think teachers are pretty good at it because they've been around students for a long time. Just like I've been coaching for a long time, you've been around people for a long time, you learn a lot about the person, and you learn about different personalities. And I think it benefits the child in the long run, so that's my answer.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hochstein, correct?
Yes.
Do you plan to purchase more buses to alleviate overcrowding on afternoon and/or late buses? Would you support the purchase of more buses?
If it was required by the district and it was required for safety purposes, for the numbers of students that we have, I would say yes, I would support it. I know that the state chips in a lot when they do that. So I would be for it if it was needed, but it would have to be looked at to see if it was needed,
Thank you, sir.
because they're not cheap.
Thank you. Mr. Ferrioli?
I think it's important to first look at, before you purchase any new buses, first look at how the runs are being done and whether or not, we have overcrowding of some buses. And we did a lot of that this year with the main runs. We brought in a new, the old transportation director retired. We had an interim director. He has agreed to stay with us for an additional year to try and look at some of that stuff you're talking about, the small bus runs, the larger bus runs. He revamped all of the regular bus runs this year and was able to facilitate taking out a few runs because we had bus runs that were practically empty. So I think looking at that first is really important before you go and purchase new buses. If it is a safety issue with overcrowding and we can't reroute anything where kids are on a bus too long, then yes, we should look at other avenues, and that may be purchasing a bus or two.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Warshaw,
Just repeat the question so I know how it's actually asked.
do you plan to purchase more buses to alleviate the overcrowding on afternoon or late bus runs?
You're saying they're overcrowded right now. That's what I'm
That's my
getting
understanding as,
from the question.
yes, sir.
So if they're overcrowded, the answer is yes. I would look into it and see what we would need, obviously, and make sure it was definitely something we needed. But you want your bus you want a child going home on a bus that's overcrowded? I don't. So if we need it, we gotta do what's right because it's the children. So if we need it, yes.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Panica?
I'm gonna go along with the crowd here. Actually, my child she actually drives to school now, but the last couple of years when she was in school on the late buses, she has missed the bus. They can't fit any more kids on that bus, and they close the doors, and then it's, Mom, can you come get me so I don't have to wait till 5:30 instead of the 4 o'clock bus? So you have to go and pick them up because there is no more room. So do we need an extra few buses at the high school in the afternoons? Yes. Do we need to purchase one for that? No, we probably just need to pay a driver and send another bus there. Maybe we need to send 2 or 3 extra buses instead of the one bus that is super crowded. So we do need to look into how it is routed, as Nick said. You need to look into, the empty buses as opposed to the full buses. And I know it's a big problem in the afternoons, more so than probably during the day.
Thank you, Mrs. Panica. Mr. Ferrioli?
Yes.
Can you think of any district expenses that should be cut at this time?
I do not believe we should be cutting anything at the cost of children. So if there are programs in place right now that are for children, no, then I cannot think of any. Is it possible that we could look at restructuring some of our administrative needs when people retire and possibly not replace them and maybe have someone doing, multiple genres of maybe a social studies and an English person, if we had someone retire and do something like that to cut some costs? Sure, that's always an initiative. We've tried really hard not to excess any educators, but to put more programs in place for the kids. I'd hate to have to do that. The district is shrinking, so, someday that may be a possibility. I'd hate to see that because, you don't want anybody to lose their job. But there's always ways. I would think the first place would be, looking at the staff when they do, through attrition, trying to cut some costs there, but not at the expense of children. If the children are getting their programs, then those programs need to stay as far as I'm concerned.
Excellent, sir. Thank you. Mr. Warshaw?
Do I think,
Are there any district programs or expenses that you feel could be cut?
I'd have to be in there looking and see how many administrations we have per child. It's almost like running a business, you have a sales manager and you have salespeople. So you have administration and you have people doing the work, you have teachers, so it's a question of what we have going on in this business. And I don't know the exact numbers. I'd have to find out, and I'm not in, he probably has more, he's privy to more knowledge of the numbers. But if the numbers don't jive, then we gotta find ways to save money and give it to the kids. So I would do what I have to do the right thing for the children.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Panico?
Do I think district expenses should be cut, or do I know of any that should be cut? Nothing should be cut for the children, ever. We don't do enough for the children. Right now, we spend millions of dollars on assistant principals, they get directors, they get consultants, and that's where we spend all of our money. We are top heavy. This tree is gonna fall down. There doesn't even need to be a big wind. We need to cut all the consultants. If you have a job and you have an AP that runs a program, why do we need a director? and a consulting firm to run that same department. A perfect example is the guidance department. A director was recently put on, the advertisement was recently put out to hire a director. It was said at a board meeting to leave the money there, but don't use it for the director, and the next week that position was out. We need that money for that director, we need that for more guidance counselors. We have 2,000 kids in that high school. You don't need a director, you need more guidance counselors. There's 7 right now, 7 guidance counselors for 2,000 kids. Use that director money for the children. So yes, we should be cutting expenses for APs, directors, and consultants. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to agree with Eileen. From what I've seen, the administration is top-heavy with existing assistant superintendents and directors. That is a place where you could probably save some money and use it for the kids, but that's a difficult situation because these people are already hired. Some people have tenure, but I'm not familiar with the numbers of how the budget is split up at this particular point, but that's what I think.
Thank you. Mr. Warshaw, each and every one of you has an agenda, whether it is to support balanced and healthy programs for children or to support a friend getting a job. Identify your agenda and state why you are running for the Board of Ed.
My agenda is basically for me. I get satisfaction because I love giving and helping kids. So my agenda, I don't have an agenda for anybody, thank God. My kid's leaving the school. I really just want, I know you're gonna say, oh, enough. My mother was old school. When you go up there, it's not how much you have, it's what you give. And I'm giving. I just feel good about giving. That's really what I want to do. So that's my agenda. And I coached football for 17 years. Some of the years I didn't get paid. So I coached it because I loved it, and the kids gave me love. So I got as much satisfaction. Parents would say thank you to me, and I'd say no, thank you. You don't really realize what it gave me. It gave me life. I love waking up and going to that football field and being with the kids. So I love doing things for the children and doing what I can. That's my agenda. There's nothing else. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Panico.
My agenda for running for the board is threefold. First, it's for the kids. Second, it's for the taxpayers. And third, it's to get rid of the corruption that currently exists in our district. People have mentioned that it's not what you know, it's who you know. Nick mentioned that he's given 2 courtesy interviews. I don't want to misquote you. Two courtesy interviews, whether they got the job or not. I think that's something that we shouldn't be doing. I think everyone should be on an equal footing. I don't think anyone should have any special privileges, and I think we should be doing for our children and for our taxpayers, and that's it. That should be the only agenda. Anybody else, and I've said this before as well, everything that we do as a board, we should first of all take community input. Second, but more importantly, we should always ask ourselves, does this hurt or hinder children? And if it hurts and hinders children, then we shouldn't be doing it. And that's the bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hochstein? Would you like me to repeat it? Yes, sir. Each and every one of you has an agenda, whether it be to support balanced and healthy programs for kids or to support a friend to get a job. Please identify your agenda and why you are running for the Board of Ed.
Well, I have no personal agenda. I believe in volunteering. Like I said before, I'm retired. I have the time to give to the school district. I believe in transparency and honesty. And I think that everybody should work together, staff, students, faculty, and the community.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ferrielli?
Well, when I ran for the board 3 years ago, my agenda was to get on the board and make a difference with the testing that was going on, with the refusal movement that had started to build in Connecticut. My son was only a second grader, so he was about to take the test the following year. I had come down, I had been vocal, and I felt like that was something that I needed to be a part of. I'm an educator, so children and doing what's right by kids is important. As far as what my agenda is now, that was it then. That really hasn't changed. But I have seen a lot of great things in Connecticut over the last 3 years. I'd like to continue to be part of that and see some of those things, finished. Some of them are in the beginning stages of being rolled out. Some of them are, in the middle of them. And I'd like to continue to work with the kids and just make sure that those things stay in place for them. So that's really my agenda now. I don't believe in walking away from things when I'm not finished. And that's why I'm sitting here.
Thank you, sir. A frequent complaint, Mrs. Panico, I'm sorry. A frequent complaint about the board is poor communication. Do you have any suggestions to improve communication for people that cannot attend meetings?
Okay, repeat that one more time, please.
A frequent complaint about the board is communication. Do you have any suggestions to improve communication for those people who cannot attend meetings?
Yes, I've brought those suggestions to Linda as recently as Tuesday night. There was an incident about a meeting on April 25th that no one knew about. The current policy is that they send it out to the PTAs, who then send it out to their members. But what about someone who's not part of the PTA? They have a Facebook page, they have a website. They should be posting these meetings in a conspicuous place so that the entire community can see it. They also began videotaping when I did, so their videos are up there as well. They're a different perspective than mine. And they've missed a few, I've missed a few, so it's a good way to know that you can see both videos. There is also email. We have Board of Ed calls where they can send out ed alerts. There's a lot of ways that we can improve communication. The simplest way is to reach out to the community. By any way and means possible, you have to get that information out there. I do it now with my videotaping, and I have a document that I ask questions on so that the community can look at it and get the information. But it shouldn't be on me. I'm not on the board. I'm not a district employee. The district should be doing that.
Thank you. Mr. Hochstein?
I think the district also should be doing it. I know that a while ago, they used to have a flyer that got mailed out to everybody with information about the district. They stopped doing that quite a while ago because of the cost. Now everything is technology-based. And I think maybe something to go out from the board to the community and let them know where these groups are and what their locations are on the internet, and what their, what their addresses are, so people can follow these groups, because I know that I had a hard time following some of these groups for a while. And that's it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ferrioli?
Can you read the question again? I just want to see if there's any specifics that I need to touch upon.
Yeah, it's a little
A
bit.
frequent complaint about the board is poor communication. Do you have any suggestions to improve communication for people that cannot make meetings?
All right, well, if we're specifically talking about the board, I think that it's important that board members try to get to as many events as possible, be out in the public. I think that's part of, what you do. I've tried to make myself accessible. It's not the easiest thing in the world. You could be out 7 nights a week, including Sundays. There's always events going on in Connecticut. I've never, turned down someone coming up to me and approaching me. I've welcomed that. I put it out on, any kind of social media that I've used, ask me questions, come, talk to me. I've gotten phone calls. So I think it's important that a board member makes themselves accessible. As far as the district, if that's where the question was leading, I'm not sure it was. It says board, but if they're looking for communication from what the board is doing, I think we've made huge strides in that. We now have a Facebook page. We now have, we have a PR firm that puts all that stuff out there and organizes all that stuff. We have a district photographer that goes around to every event and takes tremendous photographs. He's awesome. He puts all that stuff out there. I know it's difficult sometimes if you don't know where it is. Maybe we need to do a better job of communicating where those sites are and where they can get to them. But once you're there, I think there's a lot of information out there about the district, and it's pretty well easy to follow. So I guess communication could be improved as far as where the sites are and how to get to them, but other than that, I think we've made a lot of strides there in the last couple of years.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Washer?
I wish whoever asked the question could actually say it the way they wanted to say it. Can you say it?
Is that acceptable for the individual in the audience to ask it the way they
Yeah.
intended? No? Okay.
We have to do this.
Can you say it one more time so I can really?
Exactly as it's written. A frequent complaint about the board is poor communication.
Poor communication, okay?
Do you have any suggestions to improve communication for people that cannot make meetings?
Okay, so the people on the outside, the public, that can't make the meetings.
And imagine if
So-
it interferes with their schedule.
I know flyer going out would definitely help. I know word of mouth would definitely help. If I was on the board, I would definitely know a lot more and I would actually talk to people. I'd have an email, I don't know if there is an email right now, but getting more people involved and making more people feel important about what's going on in the district helps tremendously, and it starts at the top, and that's the Board of Education. If we communicate well and we get along together and work well together, it would be amazing to see the trickle-down effect it would have with the teachers, the administration, the students, and everybody, and that would be the main goal to do, something like that.
Thank you, sir.
Does anybody mind if I just add something quickly that will help all people? It's not about,
That's okay.
it's about anybody who gets elected. If you're not aware that the district clerk actually works for the Board of Education, so you can always contact the district clerk and get messages, and the emails go directly to the district clerk, and then they get forwarded to the BOE. So that's just important, I think, that people know that, and when you guys
I
are on
don't
the
think
board.
a lot of people do know that.
Right, to use the district clerk, because that's kind of your go-between, because you have a job, you have, and you're not in the district all the time. So sometimes the district clerk can act as the go-between. So it's a good contact point for parents to know as well. So that-
And
I'm
also
not trying-
people can sign up to receive the Board of Ed notices directly through the district clerk.
So I think us being on the board would be great, if we were on the board, you're on the board,
Yeah.
communicating more with the public and letting them know, hey, we got something coming up, why don't you get on this, and this way you know more information. And I'm just giving a word of mouth means a lot. Obviously, our district is how big, and how many people are here,
Moderator, get back to it.
All right,
sorry.
Mr. Hochstein,
Sorry, we got off that. I apologize.
No, I
I just think it
agree.
was important that.
You're right, no.
I think we just needed
And
like
she
a
does a great
30-second
job,
pause
too.
for a second.
For the most part.
Ready? Okay, Mr. Hochstein, if Connecticut has qualified candidates, would you as a BOE trustee look to hire from within or look to the outside to fill an open position should one arise?
I think I would look at both. I think that would be fair. You want to hire the best for the community, for the kids. For the kids. You have people on the inside that have taken classes and they're going to school to advance themselves. You have people from the outside also that are looking to get into Connecticut. So I think you need to look at both sides.
Excellent, thank you, sir. Mr. Ferrioli?
I think very simply to state to that question, all things being equal, if you can put it on paper that A and B are exactly the same, then you should hire the person from Connecticut because they know Connecticut.
Thank you, sir.
That's the advantage. And that's what you want for your kids, because they're going to be able to help the kids more than someone who's outside. So that's a simple question.
Thank you. Mr. Warshaw?
Kind of agree, gotta agree.
That's an easy one.
And I just wrote it down. If you qualify within and they're on the same playing field, take the guy from Connecticut, your students are familiar with them, your children, and it's about the children. Easy question, thanks.
Thank you.
You gonna let me answer that one?
Yes, ma'am.
I saw you threw the card down, I
Oh,
didn't
no.
know what if I wanted to
Would
repeat
you like
it.
me to repeat it?
No.
Okay.
So I agree with Nick and Mr. Warshaw. If it's a level playing field, A versus B, and A is from Connecticut, you should pick A. With that being said though, the way our hiring committees are right now, that isn't always the case. So that policy and that procedure needs to be fixed first so that we can actually compare A to B, apples to apples, and then pick the proper one.
Excellent.
Thank you.
This question is about discipline and recess. Do you think our schools have enough recesses and allow enough physical activity so kids can actually let off their steam?
Who starts that one?
Nick, I apologize, Ms. Ferrioli.
I think we just increased the elementary recess by a few minutes. I think it's a stepping point. We need to, revisit it and see how it's working for the kids. But only the experts can tell you that. Only, the principals, the teachers, the psychologists, the people that are working with those kids, the aides that are out at recess are going to tell you whether they're benefiting from that or they need more time. More time is a difficult thing. I can honestly say I sat in on the scheduling of that and trying to work out the extra time we gave them. And that was almost impossible in certain schools because of the size of certain populations. Certain schools it was very easy. certain schools with the size of population, it was not as easy, because you have to have certain designated times for lunch, you have to have certain designated times for phys ed. There are phys ed requirements that every student has to have within a week. So we've kind of pushed it to the max at certain schools where we have a large population, but again, revisiting it and trying to be creative and find another way. If everybody on the playing field feels that this benefited, but they could still use an extra another 10 minutes, you gotta look at it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Warshaw?
You're basically asking, do I think we should add more time?
Yeah, should we increase the amount of recess?
I know that they did just add 10 more minutes, but you know what? Everything's adjustable, everything can be everything can be looked upon. So as a district, we would have to look upon it and see how it's going. So we haven't been able to evaluate where it is right now. But if the students, I think the recess is very important. It's basically you're communicating. I'm hoping the kids that are on recess, I would be a firm believer on recess, no cell phones and stuff. I don't know what the policy is right now. But I would like kids to communicate with each other. And that's really important. I would take away cell phones. I do it at home when my kids eating dinner sometimes, put the phone down. It's just, you wanna look at me and talk to me? You don't talk to me like this, because it ain't working. Look at me when you talk to me. So, that's just my way.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Panico?
No electronics at the table, that's the rule in my house. We did increase recess 10 minutes. We were way behind for quite some time, for many years, on our requirements for gym class and exercising, and we were too low when they did an audit on us. It was a few years ago, I think it was right before you got on the board. So that, maybe now that we've increased that 10 minutes, we're actually meeting the state requirements. I'm not really sure. I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to ask the board.
It doesn't have anything to do with the phys ed. They increased the phys ed last year at the 2 lower grade levels, because those are the ones that were not in compliance.
Right, we were not in compliance.
But now everybody in elementary is in compliance.
Okay, that's what I said. I wouldn't know that
But it doesn't,
unless I
they're
asked
different
them.
from recess.
Right. So I believe in a child, the whole child. So if you have a child that exercises and gets all that extra energy out, they're gonna focus better in class. So I think that if teachers even wanted to incorporate it in their class, in 5 minutes in their class, and they say, let's do some stretching exercises before we start our lesson, that would be a great teacher initiative. Can we do it as far as the time goes? We might have to extend the day to do that, to make sure that we can get the kids the exercise that they need. But I would never be against giving kids more recess or more exercise or more ways to get that energy out, especially at the elementary levels.
Thank you. Mr. Warshaw?
Yes. Bat and lead off, go.
Identify one aspect of the district procedure and process that is corrupt and
Yeah,
in
I
need
don't
of...
think Mr. Hochstein is.
Mr. Hochstein?
I don't
Yeah,
want to
you
skip
did
him.
it
I
last
don't
time.
feel- I'm using
Damn
the
it, I was
opportunity.
It's okay.
I started, so.
All right.
That's it,
Mr.
you're fired.
Hochstein,
He's fine.
he's fired on his day off, right? He's volunteering to be fired. Go ahead.
I think recess is very important,
Yes, sir.
especially for the elementary school kids. I know that, I've heard that they have increased the time frame for that. I guess we would have to look at it and see if the kids were getting what they needed. That would be up to the staff that's outside with them and their teachers. To put another initiative forward to increase the time again might not be possible because of the classes and the schedule of the school.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now, Mr. Ferriola, your question. I'm sorry. I apologize, Mr. Hochstein.
No, it's me. No, actually, it was on you. I answered first.
It's on me this time.
Hold on.
No.
Mark's up, yes. You skipped over Rob.
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Mr.
I'm ready.
Warshaw.
Yes.
Identify one aspect of the district procedure and process that is corrupt and in need of restructuring.
What's corrupt right now? I'd have to be in on the whole thing to really look and see what's corrupt, but I've been listening to what Eileen's saying, the hiring seems corrupt, one aspect. I think the hiring, I think we have rules in place when we hire people. So if we have rules, we go home and teach our kids you don't break rules or laws. They're a precedent, that's what they are. I don't care what it is or what it's for, we've had situations in the past and it blew up. And the reason why it blew up is because the board, I believe, let it blow up. They didn't take control of the situation. And by what I mean by control of the situation, if you don't like a rule, get it changed. But if there's a rule you need to stick to the rule. And that's just a firm belief I have. I'm not more special than anybody else, it's just the way it is in life. And if we don't stick by that, what are we teaching our children? It's okay when we want to do it a certain way. If I was privy to know all the information, and there was a reason why something wasn't done, I could maybe live with it. But if there's no reason or no proof or no cause, I'm not happy with the result, because we all need to be treated equal, and we all need to abide by the same rules. And that's just the way life is.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Panico?
Since I ran out to see if they could turn the air conditioning back on, I didn't hear the question, so could you repeat it?
Identify one aspect of the district procedure and process that is corrupt and in need of restructuring.
The procedure and process that is in need of restructuring? There's a lot of things that I personally find corrupt in our district. But as far as procedures and process, first of all, there are no procedures. Every time I have asked to see a procedure manual, I have never been given it. There's policy in place, but procedure varies from day to day. I'll give you an example. Again, as everyone knows, my family went through a hardship, and I've had to go in and ask for a trip, a high school trip. So my first question was, is it covered for kids that are in financial need? And I was told, yes, absolutely, and it's on tape. Yes, absolutely, this is covered for kids on need. We will make sure that your child goes on that trip. The next time I went in, I was told, no, it's only if it's curriculum-based. So, no, but you know what, we'll give you half. And then I was told another time, oh, wait, it's not curriculum-based, and we already gave you half, and now there's 3 or 4 senior trips, so we're gonna give you only 2, but usually it's only 1. So it's changed so many times. The procedures have changed. They need to be written down, they need to be followed, we need to have justification for why we're doing things, and it needs to be fixed because it's really, the policy's there, but the procedures are not. It's done differently depending on who you talk to.
Thank you.
Wow, that was pretty cool.
It was actually heartbreaking.
No, you know what? A lot of people don't even know that.
No.
How many people know that?
I would not have known that if it was not for my own
Sorry.
situation.
No.
It's okay. No. Mr. Hochstein?
Yes. At this point right now, I'm not familiar with, and I don't know if there was corruption in the district, but that will be one of my jobs as a board member, to find out and fix it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ferrioli?
Okay. I'm going to start out with an interesting statement. Corruption's a very strong word. When I hear the word corruption, I think of a group of people scheming to do something. Having sat on the board for the last 3 years, I don't believe that exists. Do I believe we have problems that arise? Absolutely. Do we handle them? Yes. Are there sometimes that corrections need to be made? Absolutely. I do believe there needs to be consistency, something that Eileen is talking about. That shouldn't happen where policy is changing from time to time. But as far as corruption goes, that's a pretty strong word. So I'm going to stick with, yes, consistency is probably the easiest way to fix anything like that that's broken, making sure that people are following what the procedures are and that it's well known to everybody what the procedures are.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Panico?
Okay. Is this the last round yet?
We can take, do you want a break for a
Crowd
few
is
minutes?
dwindling. No.
No,
Well,
the crowd is
the
dwindling.
crowd
I
is
think we're
dwindling.
losing.
The attention
I
span.
think we're losing everyone.
I don't think, how many more questions do you have?
I have
No.
several,
I don't need a break.
probably
I
10.
don't need a break, but I think we should wrap it
You
up.
know, the reality
Mr. Washer
is
needs to use the restroom. So
Okay,
we'll
so let's take a 5-minute break.
5-minute break. Yay.